to God, which is nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for
So, first up, we have Eric participating remotely, so I'm just going to read a little remote participation statement consistent with the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, Regulation 940 CMR 29.10, which allows for remote participation in certain circumstances under the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law regulations. The Mendon-Upton Regional School Committee will be conducting this meeting with remote participation with one of our members, Eric Brett. Any and all votes will be conducted by roll call votes. Per usual, this meeting will also be recorded and live streamed. So first up, a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I move to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting, October 30th.
Second.
Vote by roll call. Vicki Ludwigson, aye.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Jim Borky, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye.
Matt Hagan, aye.
Eric Brown, aye.
Agenda is approved. Next up, we should approve the motion to approve the minutes from October 16th.
So moved. Second.
Vicki Ludwigson, aye.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Jim Borky, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye.
Matt Hagan, aye.
And Eric Brown, aye.
Minutes are approved. Next on the agenda, school committee chairperson comments. I have none. So we'll move on to community comments. Is there anyone either in the room or online has comments?
I see Bill Gates raised.
We'll move on to student comments. School committee rep, 1 by 3.
Hello, I'm Nina Miguel. So, sharing some updates. We first have the girls soccer team for Nima won the Central Mass Championship for the 3rd year in a row. We have the Nipmuc Drama Guild presenting Tuck Everlasting this coming Friday and Saturday, November 3rd and 4th. Tomorrow, for Halloween, the Nipmuc will have its Halloween celebration celebrated in the courtyard. We also, last week, we had the social studies field trip to the Edward M. Kennedy Institute on last Thursday, October 26th in Boston. Students got to simulate the debating and passing of a bill by the U.S. Senate in a one-to-one recreation of the Senate chamber. I was there, so it was pretty cool. Last Saturday, we had students in AP STEM classes attend a Saturday training session. And since we have a large range of AP STEM classes that many people go, I can say that I was there for AP Chem. It was awesome. We did a lab. It's great. This week we'll have half days, Wednesday and Thursday, the 1st and 2nd of November, for the parent caregiver conferences. During those conferences, we'll have peer leadership advised by Ms. Fagan. We're going to have a big sale selling food and snacks. We're also going to have the Nipmuc Wind Ensemble will perform their chamber music concert during second period on this coming Wednesday. And to end the week off, Friday, we'll have the end of term 1.
What was the bill you debated?
We debated on the climate with things like sustainable energy and fossil fuels concerning, and should we get rid of the fossil fuels? Should we transfer to new energy sources? How is that going to affect the economy and jobs? And we also discussed foreign policies when it comes to climate. And we ended up passing the bill that we decided on with a few amendments.
It looks like we have a student presentation that's being postponed. We have a sick teacher, unfortunately. And that we will turn it over to Dr. Cohen.
Right, so I have a continuation of lots of excellent district updates. I'll start with the Spooky Run, which was held yesterday by and sponsored by the Mendon-Upton Ed Foundation. You had your very own Jim Forkey at the table registering me. So I did walk. It's also I want to start calling it a spooky run and walk because I walk it and most people ran it. So I was right at the end of everybody. But I still participated. It was a lot of fun. And what I really like too is everyone's dressing up and you have the junior goblin run too with the younger students. So it can be a lot of fun. And just want to thank you for all the volunteers and for hosting and bringing back that excellent event. Another great group we have is We Care Misco. They're having their next meeting coming up this Wednesday night at 7 o'clock for any parents, community members who might be interested in joining We Care projects at Misco for this coming year. Our 5th grade students attended Nature's Classroom last week. They had an excellent time and couldn't have had any better weather than they did. I don't know if they've ever had such beautiful weather. They had an awesome time. They came back, and thank you to all the teachers and chaperones that helped to make that a success. It takes a lot of people in order to bring that many students away for a couple days. Athletic registrations are open now for students who are interested in participating in a winter sport at Misco or at Nipmuc, and the Nipmuc gear store is open for another week for anyone who wants to order some Nipmuc gear before the next season. I'm going to be working with a couple Nipmuc students this year as some marketing communication interns with me, and they're exposing me to other areas of social media that we need to embrace so I can get more in touch with the student voice at Nipmuc. That's one of my goals. And they're going to be working with me on how we can maybe bring to life the life of a Nipmuc student here and successes and what a day in the life is like, so we can try to highlight even more what's going on, the awesome things that Mina was just talking about that are going on in our school. So I'll keep you posted on that. We also are partnering with LSDO, which is one of the organizations that we work with for offering PD in the region to expand our PDL 101 training. So you often hear about the project-based learning for the last training we've been providing the last 5 years. And I just wanted to thank Cheryl for continuing that on, beyond what we're already offering in our district through some of our membership organizations. So those are my quick updates from around some highlights of the upcoming week. Anybody have any questions? Anything I mentioned? Then if I could invite Jen D'Angelo to come on up, our Director of Student Support Services is going to provide us an update of all the great things happening in her department. And Sam, if you could pull up her presentation, please. Thank you. Awesome.
We're casing it out.
There.
You're doing great, Kim. Good morning.
So welcome. Thanks for having me. For those of you who I haven't met, I'm Jen D'Angelo, Director of Student Support Services here from Mendon-Upton. I'm doing just a fall update to give you a little update on some of the things that we've done last year and some of the things we're continuing to work on this year. Okay. So this summer, that one, perfect. So this summer we did extended school year services. This is a program that we run for the summer for students who require continuation of services and academic support over the summer months. This year we serviced about 60 students across 3 platforms. Those 3 platforms are a 6-week program, a 2-week program, and then related services. Some students participate in more than one, so you may be in the 6-week program but receive related services. But those are the 3 platforms in which we work. We housed most of our programming this year at Misco. There was some work going on at Memorial, so we utilized NISCO is our home base, which was a nice opportunity for students and staff to work collaboratively. It also collaborated with our summer enrichment program, which was housed at NISCO as well. Some of those activities that our students got to engage in with the alpaca visit, which was a huge success, as you can see from our pictures, and some arts and crafts and activities in the gym. This continuation, the 6-week program also has a community aspect that's part of their programming. So they do some community involvement and some community activities. Some of our community outings on Wednesday include the police station, West End Creamery, and a handful of other locations where the students will do an extended day on that Wednesday to engage in some community opportunities. And that's for really a purpose of generalizing skills. So we can teach a lot of great things in the classroom, but until we create, authentic opportunities in the community to finalize those skills and generalize them, that's when we really see that our work is paying off. So that was the part of the community outings, and then our vocational jobs. Some of our upperclassmen have vocational placements in the community that they do during the school year. With a great bunch of staff members and community partners, we've been able to continue that work over the summer. So they're continuing in those same co-ops over the summer and engaging in that learning through the community vocational placements as well. And then just a big thank you to the exceptional ESY staff who come in every year, do an outstanding job. They get a little bit of vacation break right when the school year ends. They get a little over July 4th, and then they're, all speed ahead for the rest of the summer. So I can't say enough wonderful things about all of our staff members that take time to dedicate their summer with us and our students. Oh, this is our police station visit. So one of our activities this summer was the police station visit, in building community partners, and they got to see the cars and sit in them and kind of get a sense of it not being a scary opportunity, but having, meaningful relationships with our service people. Our Best Buddies update. So last year, for those of you who remember, we launched our Best Buddy chapters at MISCO and NITMUC, which was really exciting for us. It was something that we had been working on for a couple of years. Last year, we finally were able to get that ball rolling, which was great. Our MISCO chapter did an outstanding job engaging. They had come in mid-year, I think, and done a presentation with Jen Mannion and some staff members. So this is just a quick recap. We participated in the Friendship Walk, and at that Friendship Walk, we were recognized twice for fundraising, once for our chapter fundraising, and then once for our individual fundraising. So Brenda Webster was our star fundraiser for individual, and then our chapter was our top fundraiser for the Friendship Walk, which was great. Additionally, our advisors, Maribeth Ishler and Caitlin Asm at the middle school were given the award of Rookie Chapter of the Year for Mass in Rhode Island, which was awesome. So they were recognized for their work in really getting us up and running at a high caliber on our first year out. And then at the high school, they launched their first ever Rockstar Invitational at Shining Rock with our partner. Shining Rock is a wonderful partner for us throughout the year as well. We have a lot of students that work up there throughout the school year doing a variety of tasks. Dave Antonelli is a champion for that work. And this year we launched our first All Abilities Rockstar Invitational at Shining Rock. It was not just a NITMUC event, we volunteered there, but it was for anyone in the local communities to come out and participate. So that was a really big success. And at the high school, we have Megan Kirby leading our chapter up there. So thank you to all of them for making our first year a successful one. DESE IEP improvement. This is where the fun really happens. So last year, I started to talk about DESE's work in improving the IEP process. This has been, I think it originally started in 2016. We got a little derailed, we came back. And then the last 2 years, we've really been kind of finalizing what that new IEP is going to look like, how we're going to implement. So the most recent updates are in there for links with you for technical guidance that was released over the summer, updates over the summer, technical guidance in the fall. Additionally, they've offered some trainings to get us ready for this big exciting move in the fall of 2024. The regional trainings are regional where 400 to 500 people are showing up. So that has really been not a great opportunity for our teachers and our staff to learn at a more individual level. So what we did is we collaborated with Alan Bloom. For those of you who are familiar in the special ed world, Alan has been around for a very long time. So we collaborated with him this year for a series of PDs for him to come in and really work with our staff on a more individualized basis around some of the newer components, around the conversion of some of the older components to a more data-driven IEP. So he's gonna be working with us on 5 PD days and then an additional half day at the end. So he'll be working on some IEP development around goal writing and measurability, because again, there's a really big push on the new IEP to be data driven. And then towards the spring, he'll be taking that information that we're doing and moving it into the new platform. So we've been collaborating with him. He's been a great partner with us. He's been a resource of mine for years. And we were fortunate that he was able to squeeze us in for these 5 days this year to help us continue that work. And then the last piece of this is Power School exploration. I think I talked about this a little last year, if you remember, about looking at bringing together our systems. So right now our eSped is what we use for our special education software. We did run a little bit of a study group at the end of the year where we had Power School, which is our student management system, come in and talk about what that conversion would look like to make it into one system. There were some concerns from our stakeholders. So we had counselors, we had special education teachers, we had general education teachers, a variety of people sitting around the table asking questions from their user lens. And we did have a handful of questions that we didn't feel we got adequate answers on and how we would implement it in the district. So we did kind of hold off on looking at that any further. It's something we're going to continue to look at. We're in contact. Liz Black has been working with me on that as well, to see what that next step would be and how we can flush out some of those concerns to see if it's going to be a viable option for us to then converge into that one system. So that's just something we're looking at. I wanted to follow up because I know I had brought it up at some point last year during one of the presentations. Counselor collaboration. So this was new for us last year. So this was an opportunity for all of our district counseling staff to get together in the room at the same time and talk about what was happening and how we can kind of calibrate our services across the district. So this is a quick review of some of the things we worked on last year. It was an opportunity for them to collaborate with their peers, but also there was some focused PD involved. We contracted with John Crocker, who's well known in the mental health and behavioral health realm, working at the state level, working at the Rennie Center and some of our other partners. So John was able to come in and do some really guided practice work with us, with our counselors, kind of hearing what we do, where we need to be, and then how do we get there. So these are the 3 things that we focused on. We focused on framing the problem, looking at student-specific data, and then developing goals around that. We also looked at measuring the impact. So how do we keep session notes structured so that we're looking at growth and development? Again, when we talk about counseling, there's a lot of we'll identify coping strategies, we'll utilize, but how do we measure that? So again, this was a lot thinking ahead to the IEP process of how do we create those data-driven aspects of it and the measurability of it, and what does success look like when we're employing constant, right? So that's a bigger question. So he did a lot of work around measuring that impact, looking at how to structure your notes, giving kids expectations, and then homework to go out and try things and engage in some of that work. And then he also talked about the product progress monitoring tools and provided us with a toolbox of more formalized assessments than just observational qualitative data, looking at like a GAD-7, which is a measurable tool to use. So he provided us with a whole toolbox of different ways that we can use to kind of measure progress and then look at how we can continue to grow. And then he also looked at improving our practices. So that's where that consultation and professional development happened, looking at other opportunities for our staff to go out and maybe engage in a PD and bring that information back around specifics. So that was kind of what we did last year. This year, we're going to continue our work. Sam, on that. Thank you. No, you're doing great. And then, so this is looking forward. So now that we're taking it to that next step. So we looked at really our individual practice a lot last year and what we had been doing and how to tighten that up. And now this year, we're looking at more of a district-wide. So one of the first things we're going to be looking at is the SHAPE, which is the school health assessment and performance evaluation system. So this is just a tool. This is kind of a questionnaire that we're going to be doing to look at what we do, and then where our areas of growth, and then where we want to be. So this is looking at, again, from a district standpoint. We'll set up a school mental health profile for the district, and then we'll look at that quality assessment, which will eventually generate a report, and that'll drive an action plan. So this is kind of digging a little bit deeper into a broader sense of having a really comprehensive behavioral and mental health plan for the district. And then the last, therapeutic services. So last year, as you know, I came with a lot of requests in this realm. We were fortunate enough to add an elementary school therapeutic support model with a designated space, a social worker, and a special education teacher. That hybrid model is just that, it's a hybrid model. So students are still engaged in their education through general education. They still have a homeroom with their peers. And then this model provides therapeutic supports throughout their day in a structured and unstructured format. So that's where we are currently. At the middle school and high school, we did have the Bright program model that we utilized that we started, I think, 4 years ago for middle school and 3 years ago for high school. That's where there's a counselor and an academic interventionist. We've been using that model, but we've had some staffing challenges with those two programs this year, where we've lost both of our counselors in those programs. So we are finally at a place where we've been able to fill those positions and get back on track. And those are models of therapeutic support that we've utilized at both the elementary, the middle and the high school level for the past several years. And that's it.
I forget, is there for the elementary school therapeutic thing, is that at both elementary schools, or is that?
Yeah,
Both of them?
just club.
It's just club.
Yeah, it's just club. So we added one teacher and one clinician. Yeah, and it's at the club school.
The progress monitoring tools that you mentioned, is that data available to parents too? Do you share that with them, or how is that?
So right now, we're in the early stages. So that was a new kind of toolbox that the counselors were exposed to last year. So they're using things to, like, the GAD-7 is anxiety. So there's like 7 questions that the students are asked every 2 or 3 sessions to see where they are. It's used right now as progress monitoring. So if it is used, the results will then be interpreted into the progress report. So parents do see it, but they're going to see it embedded in a narrative, analyzed by the counselor in relation to the goal. So we would never just send home like a GAD-7 result because it's kind of out of context.
Right.
And we haven't really formalized an expectation. It's really about where the counselors kind of feel they're using what tool to get the information that they need based on that individual student.
In your work with John Crocker, I know one of the things that he likes to do is system-wide needs analysis
Yes.
and then skill sets and
Yeah.
how qualified staff members feel during all sorts of different interventions.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that was part of the work that you did
This year.
Okay.
So that's what we came in to do last year.
Yeah.
And then we were everywhere. So
Mhm.
everyone kind of had a different expectation of what counseling looked like and what their sessions looked like and the expectation. So we had anticipated doing some of that work last year, and we got really kind of slowed down to really focus on some of that individual stuff so that we were all on the same page, because we weren't. So that's where the toolbox came into play. That's where the structured session notes came into play. Talking about, why that is important and creating a common understanding of the elements of school counseling and how they all play into these pieces that he was presenting to us.
Mhm.
So he came out 3 times last year, 4 times. We had anticipated shifting halfway through the year to what you're talking about, that needs assessment, and then looking at where we were, we didn't get there. So that's where we are this year when we start off.
Great.
Yeah. Any questions?
So with respect to the whole district,
Yeah.
if you had to say like 2 things that you're like proud of that you think we do phenomenal with, and then 2 things that we're like, we could grow in, some opportunity for growth, what would those be?
Wow. I think we do everything well, so that's tough to narrow it down. I think. So over the course of the last 4 years, I think a big push for me when I came in was to create consistency, right? That was a big thing that I heard when I met with all stakeholders. Consistency, communication, those were the 2 big ones. So I feel like that has really been at the forefront of a lot of our work, just making sure there was a lot of consistency. So when families experience special ed at the elementary level, and then they go to the middle school level, it's not a whole new world they're learning, right? They're seeing things that are the same, the approach is the same, the philosophy is the same. So that's been one of the big things, is creating that consistency across all of our buildings so that everyone understands, because it's a foreign language for some people when they're coming into it. So that's been helpful. I think the other piece that we've worked really hard in is student specific, right? Meeting the needs of our students. And I know that sounds really cliche, but I think we've really focused on what students need and how we get them what they need in the most least restrictive way. So they're still engaging with their peers. So even though we're providing therapeutic support, they're still in a second grade homeroom with their class. They're still engaging in all those activities, but we're finding ways to put those supports in place in a not so obvious way, so that kids don't feel bad, but they're getting what they need to be successful with their peers. So I think that's another big piece of what we've done. That's where you'll see the best buddies, you'll see some specialized electives in special ed. You've seen that through our co-op placements and our opportunities for students. Those have really expanded over the last couple of years. What we continue to work on, I would say, is how we collaborate with our general education partners, right? So that's another piece. So now the special education department is very consistent. They're out there, we're working together. Now, how do we get our special education partners to be consistent as well? Because a lot of that is a change. So, you know, we have a behavior in the classroom. That doesn't mean that the child leaves the classroom. That means that we support the child where they are in the classroom. And what do those strategies look like? What are the de-escalation strategies? What are the changes in language? What is the narrative that we use to create a safe environment for that student to learn that doesn't require removal, right? So I think that's some of the work that we're continuing to do now, is working with our partners to employ some of those strategies. Yeah. Right. Yeah, no worries. Thanks. That was a big one though. You caught me.
When can we look forward to hearing kind of results from the assessment performance in terms of developing an action plan?
Yeah.
How does that, what was that timeline?
Last year. So I
This
know.
year, the one-
Yeah, so we're gonna do the assessment as a group, and then what I'm hoping to do is put a committee together. Not a committee, maybe like an advisory, where we have school committee members, we have staff members all coming together to then look at the results and figure out what our priorities are and what that action plan is to accomplish our priorities. So I would say, hopefully, once we get the assessment down and we get the results, and John kind of walks us through what that looks like, I would anticipate maybe mid-year January, putting that group together, that advisory group, with a variety of stakeholders to look at what that report says, identify what our focus areas are going to be. I mean, even if there's 5 or 6 that come out of the report, we obviously have to prioritize what are going to be our top priorities going forward this year, so that our work is thoughtful, sequential, and ends with results. So I would say probably by January, we should see a broader outreach to put that group together.
Other questions, comments? No? All right,
Thank you, I appreciate it.
On to new business. I'm just thinking field trip approval.
Hi, how are you? My name is Kate Reardon. For those who don't know me, I teach Italian at Nipmuc. And I am here to try and get my 15th trip approved. So it's not the first time any of you have seen me. But usually every April vacation, every other year I go to Italy with students. And then on the other years, try to pick a place that we just want to go and see. Switzerland does speak a little bit of Italian, so that makes me happy. But the one I've been wanting to do this area of Europe for a long time. So the trip that I landed on was for Switzerland, Bavaria, southern Germany, and Austria. Kind of go from the landscapes of the Alps into southern Germany. That also gets you to a concentration camp and go to visit Dachau. And then into Austria, where The Sound of Music was up in Salzburg, and into Vienna. So people who are interested in music, with Mozart and all of that coming from Vienna. It does say Budapest, that is not added on to the itinerary just because it made it really expensive and a little longer. And I think the 3 cities themselves kind of stand out, even though I do love Budapest since I've been there. So this is a trip I'm hoping to do next April vacation. Like most trips, we would leave on the Thursday night before vacation. And then through vacation, teachers would be the chaperones. I actually have already, I haven't even like put anything up yet, but it's gotten in the grapevine that I have lots of chaperones that want to go on this trip. So I'm hoping there's like interest with the students, the ones I talk to seem interested, so. The price that is included is the 4,300. Everything's starting to be much more expensive now. That trip, that does include all of the extras. So the excursion, a Danube cruise, has a private tour fee for 25 students. So that means as long as we get 25, that is the price. If we get more than that, after 29 students, the price lowers and so on and so forth. So we did the same thing last year when I did the sign up for the Italy tour. I have been on tours with other schools and I just like our students. Not that it's just easier to control the students that I am with and they know, and it hasn't always worked out. So I decided add on a little bit of fee that knows that we'll be the only group on the bus. So it'll just be our students. And like I said, the more we get, the price comes off. So last year when we did the sign up, the price came off because we have 45 students going this April. The protection plan is on there, on tour tipping, and that includes the $200 scholarship until the 16th. So I'll be having a meeting next week to give people that opportunity. You want $200 off. After that, you can still sign up. It would just be $200 more. Any questions?
Do you wanna plan my next vacation?
Sure. As long as I can come.
That's fine.
Awesome.
I'm hoping it's not too mature of a location for the student thing. I think they'll be interested.
Motion to.
Motion to approve the trip to Europe, 2024?
2025.
25.
Italy's 2024, yeah.
Second. Comments, discussion, questions?
Roll call vote. Vicky Levinson, aye.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Jim Forkey, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye.
Matt Hagan, I.
Eric Brown, I.
Picture was approved.
Thank you so much. I always appreciate the backing of the committee, so thank you very much.
Bring pictures back.
Of course, yeah, of course. It's chocolates, it's Swiss chocolate.
You're done. Dr. Kirkpatrick is gonna close the vote. Merging better together.
Hi, everyone. I have a short story to tell you. Okay, and I'm gonna have to try to do this with like sharing my screen too, which makes me nervous. I think I'm just getting that. All right, should we go back to the old fashioned way? Sam?
Yeah.
Do you want to pull up, do you see the links that are in the agenda? Or the background notes rather?
Yes.
Can you pull up the one that says Spanish immersion welcome guide? Start with that. Yeah, that's perfect. All right. And do you mind scrolling just like 3 pages down? Awesome, right there. Perfect. All right, so this is a good visual to start the story. Last year, we welcomed 4 new Spanish immersion teachers to our district. And they were coming with their families from Spain to a new culture, to our district, to kind of like, I mean, it's like starting everything from new, you know, from scratch. And there were a lot of challenges with some of the transitions because they're coming from so far. They've got to rent places, they've got to get cars, they've got to do a whole bunch of things that probably many of us just kind of take for granted. And so there we have a Spanish immersion board that meets regularly. And there were parents that were eager to try to help make the transition for these teachers more comfortable. And so we started meeting regularly, and they had this great idea, the parents, to create a welcome guide for Spanish immersion teachers. And so we worked throughout the course of last year together collaboratively to effectively create a guide that would be able to provide information to them, to any new employee, and specifically Spanish immersion employee, in advance of their coming to the district. And so this is a welcome guide that was produced collaboratively with this group. The thing that I love, or there are many things I love about this story, but I will back up. If you scroll back up to the table of contents, yeah, there you go. Thank you, Sam. It's hard to see here, but if you click on it yourself, you can see some of the topics that they really assembled, really practical things that this group of volunteers then dedicated themselves to effectively canvassing the community, going out and connecting with people in the community to assemble these resources so that they could provide them to these teachers in advance. And I was pretty inspired by the work of this group. And so when I learned last year that they were having this Better Together Summit, that Desi was doing this summit again this year, I said, my goodness, like we could tell this story and there would be other districts who could learn from our work together. And so we did. And could you flip to the PowerPoint? There you go. And I'll just show a couple of slides from this. But so the group presented to a conference of hundreds. You know, I think the total was like 800 people were at this conference, and that's a great. Oh, if you just go back one more, this is a great slide because it will show you all the folks that were at the presentation. Not all the folks who were involved in the creation of the welcome guide, that you can find in the welcome guide too. But these were the groups who attended with us, and we split it, like, I mean, it was literally represented evenly, school district employees and parents. And we worked together. If you flip down the next couple of slides, Sam. Yeah, there we are in our presentation room, and one more. This is folks like actually doing the presentation. So we all worked together to present to over 50 people in our room. We brought the welcome guides and it was really well received. That piece of it is like, that's just like the little cherry on the Sunday. I feel like we learned a whole ton through working together. We got to know each other better, which always helps in terms of partnering and collaborating. And this welcome guide, it's not just a great idea for transitioning staff. It has so many useful kind of branches that we can take off with this. So I just thought it would be good to kind of share with you the final product, which is a living document. We'll keep adding to it things that could be useful to staff and the experience of the fact that we all had a chance to present to a bunch of educators last week.
Geez, my kids are gonna use this information after college.
Yeah, right. It's like onboarding. That's awesome, and I think it's not just hey, this is a job, but this is a community, and we're here to welcome you and you know, be a support system. Yeah, that's great.
And this group has done that and more. You know, I mean, making sure that folks have rides, places, intervening when folks that had challenges with car dealers, you know, getting cars and their information that they needed that was delayed from government agencies and stuff. So they really like just stepped up in every way. That's awesome. Sure.
So that's used for our teachers onboarding too, you said?
Yeah, we sent it out to them shortly after they were hired.
Oh, that's cool.
And then we actually had it translated into Spanish so that they could access the information more readily. So we sent that to them as well.
Very cool.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Sam. Just add to that, and I want to thank Cheryl for her leadership in that and attending all the subcommittee meetings that they worked on, and thank all the parents. It stemmed when we saw all the issues that they had. And every year, and I was talking to Jim about this earlier today, like every year we come together at Spanish Immersion Advisory Board and kind of say, what are you wondering about, or what do you think we should work on this year? And we kind of adapt. So we never had a subcommittee like that before. And so they just took off the subcommittee and started meeting and meeting and meeting. And when we had our new teachers come in this year, it was just a huge help for them and for all of us too, just in helping them with all the numerous aspects. And they're going to continue this year to update it with feedback now from the teachers who came over and other things that they noted were missing, that they said, oh, you could have had this in the packet as well. So I'm just really thankful for everyone pitching in to do that. And great. Jump into my goals. Okay, up next, if you could, I shared with you the whole packet of my goals that have kind of connections to the standards. It also has my action steps and benchmarks as well that I shared with the subcommittee a couple of weeks ago. What I was going to do here for the presentation is just kind of go over the 4 main goals, kind of what the process is typically like, just to remind everyone. But if you have specific questions or anything related to the goals, feel free to ask me as well. I would imagine most of them don't sound too different because they're pretty closely aligned with a lot of the strategic action plans that we've been doing. So if we go to the next slide, just as a reminder, we're always on this continuous improvement cycle, and the way we've been operating for the superintendent goals is to have an annual goal cycle. That sometimes, like maybe down the line, we could say, oh, do we want to do it every 2 years? Do we want to do it every year? You know, you can depend on number of years. So when we have new educators who come in, when we have it every year, when they get to be professional status, and it's a 2-year process. I like the year because we tend to have like set goals at the beginning of the year that we're kind of working towards the end of the year. So I tend to like it. And we're trying to closely align as much as we can with the teacher evaluation process, the ed eval process that we have as well, just for timelines. So we just met and did the goal setting, some of the plan development. That's what I'll be presenting tonight. Then I'll start to implement the plan. Mid-year, I'll do for that assessment piece, I'll do a mid-year update. I tend to do it right towards the end of January, typically beginning of February, depending when our meetings fall. And then as we get right to the end of our year, we would do the summative evaluation where you all would do your own piece of that with the standards and with the goals as well, and submit that. And our goal that we're trying to do is to get that done kind of within the cycle before elections, if that's possible to do so. Right. We go to the next slide. The other thing I always like to point out is my very fancy little chart I made a couple years ago, but we always we're a district that's driven by our strategic plans. I'm really proud of that work. We have a school committee that is right there aligned, supporting our strategic plan as well. And then my goals are going to be directly aligned to the strategic plan. And when you see and hear the school improvement goals from each of the schools, you'll see that alignment as well. Across with my goals, but also with up, to the strategic plan goals as well. So you've had the Nipmuc strategic, their school improvement goals that came forward, and you'll hear the rest of them in the next couple of meetings. And then it goes down. So you have the district leadership team goals tend to be aligned, straight through either with mine in supporting some of the work that I'm doing with them, and up to the strategic plan and principal goals as well are also aligned to school improvement and forwarding that. And then our educator goals, when we meet with educators, they're very familiar with what the strategic plan goals are. They're familiar with the school improvement goals, and then they work with some alignment of that work in their professional or student learning goals. And sometimes we provide what's called like model goal language, where they don't have to use those goals because it's up to the teachers to determine what their goals are. But I always see teachers, just naturally mean all the educators, but all the educators can do their own goals. But often they will choose what everyone else is working on, which is aligned. And I think this is, if you do this well, that's when you see really systemic change in an organization. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done in the last few years and continue to do so as we all are talking about the same things, which I'm sure you see when we come forward. So I'm just going to give you a highlight over the 4 goals that I have. First one, professional practice goal. That tends to be the goal that is kind of about, like, when we talk to educators, it's what they want to learn to help themselves. And what I try to do is think about, when I'm developing my professional practice goal, I always think about feedback that I've received, you know, from previous years, but I also think about, like, what am I really diving into? Like, you know, what are the workshops that I've decided that I'm going to focus on to support some of the work we're doing? And, you know, where am I spending a lot of my time, or of a new, like, bucket of area that I'm trying to work on. And as I continue to build trust and strengthen relationships with all of our stakeholders, I'm still working on, I do love communication and learning about it, so I won't deny it, but some of the focus areas that I'm working on will be related to budget. They continue to be, which have been in the past, but just also with capital planning as well, which you'll see showing up later. That is going to be a lot of our work this year. Increasing school to home engagement, so I'm hoping to do some, like, coffee chats this year. I did maybe a couple, like, strategic plan focus group meetings last year, and kind of change that to some, like, coffee chats and engage with families if they're interested in coming in. I'm also really focused, and this aligns with another goal, so there is overlap around crisis communications, which, you know, I have to do a lot of, but also, you know, ways to help, you know, support our community members when things are occurring as well. So I've already attended some trainings on that and continue to do so. So those are the key areas for my professional practice goal. Other things, some items are new in my list of action steps. I'm now in the Leading Now cohort. I've talked to you, it's like a national cohort of superintendents where we receive different training each month, and it's related to various topics related to communicating with stakeholders and working through problems of practice. So they just asked me, can I present a problem of practice to the cohort in December about something that we're working on in our community, and then all the superintendents from all the states will give feedback on that. But a lot of it's about how you communicate about it. Other things that might be new and a little bit different from last year. Working with the Nipmuc students is something I want to do and engage and see if there are other ways, either through video or other usage of, let's say, Instagram that we haven't really used. And, you know, they're trying to get me, you know, do a little TikTok video. I did not put that in my plan. There's no promises there, but you know, maybe they will, and I support them if it's all good for the good of the school. But I've already done some workshops on crisis communications, like I mentioned, and we'll continue to do that. And I'm still meeting with our Aptigee representative, which I did meet with monthly last year, and I'm still meeting with him, and also our rep for press releases, to make sure we have a current flow and update of our webpage and other ways that we can expand our communications. Any questions on professional practice goal? I'll keep going, and if you have one, you can let me know. Student learning. I had to reduce the font because I realized it was really, really long. What I tried to do, in essence, we have in our strategic plan a couple of our main categories. 2 of our main categories of work and priorities are obviously focused on instructional learning and instruction and curriculum assessment in this deeper learning, authentic learning. What this goal is about those 2, but it leans a little bit on the deeper learning, authentic learning side, because that's just, I've been more active with some of that work, especially with the leadership team and plan to. But what we're focused on is, you know, deepening our own understanding of what do we mean when we say deeper and authentic learning. So we're working on how to strategize that, how to visualize that, how to apply it, what do we look for when we go into classrooms. So as an example of something I'm working on with the leadership team is when we do every other meeting we have in one of the school buildings, and we're looking for the deeper learning types of activities that are taking place in the classroom, and then we're talking about it. And so that's kind of part of the work that I'm doing naturally with them. But also because of our expansion and looking to expand, which I know we're always talking about it, but it is a big part of our work, is the innovative career pathways. That's a big part of our work, and the continuation at the middle school with the project-based learning. So the supports that we're wrapping around that, and conversations with teachers around them and supporting them, is a big part of our work. And finally, we're still working to expand our project Lead the Way down grade wise at the elementary level. So we're continuing making a lot of progress, and also embedding a portrait of a learner in even more so into our practice. And so what you'll see is a lot of work that I'll be doing along with the leadership team, along with Cheryl, along with Colleen as well, in order to expand those opportunities and those understandings. So that's the essence of the focus for student learning this year. My goal. Okay. Keep going.
Amazing summary.
Try. All right, goal number 3, to improve our crisis planning and safety. We have started this a little bit last year, which is why I wanted this to be, it is one of our strategic goals this year as well, but I wanted to have it be my goal because I'm spending a lot of time, and I would say I'm probably the point person who's coordinating this with our SROs and in partnership with them. And I just was able to meet with them last week. We meet quarterly, you know, together as a group, but we're getting it's been helpful. We're getting a ton of resources from the state. I don't know if it's a new focus for the state, but they're sending a lot of resources that are involving a lot of additional trainings that they didn't provide for educators before. And so what I'd like to do is, you know, bring all of those trainings to our leadership team, you know, to myself, to other teams as appropriate. And what we've done is we had a draft district protocols, like expansive protocols for, you know, what happens if, I'm gonna knock on wood, there's a tornado, you know, like we have multi-hazard type of plans that we're required to have, but we hadn't really updated them from the district level. All the schools had them, but we didn't have a standard, like when Jen was talking before, like having consistency. So we've been working on that, but also working on adding trainings, additional CPR training, or a few of us, Mendon just offered Narcan training, which I was really thankful that they did. The Board of Health offered that, and a few of us went over and were trained in that, and it was great. I learned a ton. It was just, you know, an hour. And recently, I don't know if you remember, last year we had a lot of it was called squatting, where people, and I had to send some notices out. We weren't one of the districts that received one of those calls, but what happens is, you know, you'll have calls from other countries. They use robocalls that come into police stations, and they basically try to use all of your resources for fire and police to go to a location, but nothing is real. And it was a training on it that Homeland Security just did with FBI and with some, you know, local police and state, and it was for superintendents. I was able to attend it. The SROs had a similar one, and so we're just, you know, really focusing in on some of those. So then that way, when we have our full calendar of trainings, which we have, we're making them more consistent and more comprehensive, and then people, you know, have more information and just feel more comfortable for whatever might potentially come up. And so I'm just proud of the work we've already done, but it's definitely a high focus area for me personally this year, and I'm spending a lot of time with our SROs on some of these plans. Any questions on that? Last one is capital planning, which everyone's going to be an expert in by the end of the year, because you're going to hear about it for the rest of the year. So here's your warning. But we have been building up to the capital plan. I'm sure you're aware of that in all last year as well, with all the facility reviews that we've done. A lot of assessments have been done. You know, we had, like, going back to crisis planning, security assessments that I'm going through with the SROs to identify if there are any things that could go into a capital plan that we haven't thought of before. But we are always working and we always send you kind of the list of what's going on. Jay's good at keeping track of that with Ken and sends, I give you kind of updates on it. But to really be on the short-term plan, to really build out that long-term plan for what our needs are, and also become really familiar, not just myself, but the team and all of you, especially members of the capital planning subcommittee, in regard to what MSBA can do for reimbursement, what programs are out there, and looking into other, grant programs even that can support some of the work that we need to do. So that is a lot of time that I'll be working on with Jay, with Ken, and with the group this year. And, want to make sure that's a big focus area for me personally. We've already started one of the action steps that I shared with you, which is the building of a capital planning webpage. So we'll continue to update that and have resources for the community. So as we go through reviews, people will be able to look up capital planning and go and see what it is and where we're at. And when we have the final capital plan, it will be published there as well. But we'll put presentations there. We have presentations and various updates throughout the process, just to be as open and transparent as possible as we go through. And that is it. Those are the 4 goals. Typically we'll do, a couple of the strategic plans I'll plan as a district, goal that I'm working on. I don't know if you have any additional questions or comments.
A quick curiosity question.
Sure.
Going back to your first goal.
Yeah.
You've unfortunately had to send home some communication around some really difficult topics over the last week or two.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if that's a representation of some of the work you've done with the firm supporting our crisis communications, or
Sometimes it is, sometimes, so one time I have only leaned on them once for a crisis communication, although they keep telling me, you should call us, that's what we're here for. I haven't yet for that piece of it, of the press release. What typically we've done is, I hate to say, like, you kind of starting to get a routine of who needs to get what, like in building out, like, what is a crisis communication plan? But it's the leadership team all in, working through editing, doing that. And then we get resources. So in particular with things that have happened recently, there are also, because I'm networked with, there is another organization that there was a series of press releases and, language, and there are those elements of it that I draw upon that have come only because I've gone to those trainings. And I did attend a training already they do trainings on crisis communications through that PR firm that we partner with. So I have taken that and used some of that. But I haven't had them help write it, if that makes sense. But they do that. So if there, was ever anything where we needed to be elsewhere, they could start to draft the things that would go out to the community, which is always good to know that they're there on the other side of a phone call too, if we needed it. Good question. Anything else? All right, so this is something that you would need to have a motion for.
I move to approve the superintendent goals for the 2023-2024 school year. Second.
Comments, questions? Goals? So we'll vote by roll call. Vicki Levinson, aye.
Sean Pulsar.
Jim Forkey, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye.
Matt Hagan, aye.
Eric Brown, aye.
All right, superintendent goals are approved. Next up, we have subcommittee updates, starting with capital planning.
So capital planning had their second meeting last Tuesday. Jay and Ken had gone through the Habib and Associates facility evaluation that we reviewed at the end of last year. Where that was about $80 million in total costs. They went through and it came down to about 43 million that they kind of targeted as high priority and important things that we should focus on. Both towns had representation there. They expressed some concern around sensitivity and understanding the town budgets. And we talked a little bit about milestones on capital improvements, reviewed the MSBA reimbursement rates and how they might apply to various projects in our district. The next steps there, so we've got tours of the fields and facilities coming up with still dates and times to be determined. And the next capital planning meeting, there is the presentation on the fields, the infrastructure, the technology infrastructure and security. So, any questions?
Budget.
Which is me. So I got chairman this year. So, so yeah, we had our first meeting on the 11th of this month, and we're taking the division of labor here. It's a little bit more confusing this year because we actually have a capital planning committee talking about finance, and we have the budget committee talking about finance. You think of us as the operations side of the budget, this is the long-term capital investment side of the budget. So obviously, when we're thinking about operational budget, we've got all the work that Maureen and Jay put in last year, creating a pretty good budget book and a structure for how the budget is supposed to work from year to year. We're benefiting from that, because it's essentially an update on the same template that we had last year. Literally is the same template, which is kind of fun, actually. There's a couple of notable areas that are changing in their expenditure. One of the big ones was out of district placement, which is sort of up by a pretty large margin over the last 2 years. If I'm correct. What was the percentage last year? Something huge, but
Talking about the OSD approved
yes,
amount.
yeah.
Yeah, it was up 14.5. It's only gonna be around 4 or 5%.
So if you include something like that, 15% over the last couple of years, pretty steep. So there will be some expenditures that we don't quite know where they lie yet, but for the most part, the budget's in line. We have the 2 big events happening this year, and that is negotiation of all the contracts with the teachers, custodians, and then we have capital planning. So we have to account for the impact on our operational budget with respect to those things. But it's our first meeting, so we're going to go forward from here. That's pretty much it. Any questions?
Great. Policy, next meeting is going to be December 4th. Report. Negotiations. Committee met to determine potential dates that were in some scheduled meetings with MRDA. Those were shared with representatives, association leadership following the meeting. Other matters not anticipated that we can be within 48 hours of the meeting. Then, do you have any correspondence?
I received correspondence. Someone reached out to my wife, reached out to her, and my wife told her to write me an email. So Melissa Morse is a member of the MISCO PTO board. And I guess at this PTO meeting, Dr. Benoit had asked them to provide some volunteers to help out in the library. So Mrs. Morse and another member of the board went in there to try to clean up and open up the library for make it more available for students to use. And she came up with a list of issues with the library. I can forward this to the committee now, but I wasn't sure I was supposed to do that. Or how open meeting laws would work, so I held off on forwarding this until I discussed it in the meeting. But basically, it comes down to, it seems like there's a lack of, PTO's perspective, I guess, a lack of, support for the library specifically at MISCO. The PTO and parent volunteers can make up some amount of that through volunteer effort, but there's a certain lack of experience and expertise, and just some amount of there's some safety hazards, minor safety hazards and things like that she noted as well. That she wanted to bring to our attention so that we could find some way to provide funding or something like that. So I told him that I would bring it to the committee. She said she had a discussion with Dr. Benoit after the first volunteer session. So at least building leadership's perspective, this shouldn't be new, but just bring it to committee, the whole committee, that's something we can consider for budget this year, or you know, operationally, this year, it's a lot of can do provide a little bit of help there. So I will forward that to that email for the rest of the community.
Other correspondence. Future agenda items, with school improvement plans for MISCO Memorial Clock and the update on innovative learning and technology. And we also have update on district accountability. The motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Second.
Roll call vote out. Vicky Ludwig's aye.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
And Forky, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye.
Hagan, hi.
Eric Brown, aye.
All right, you're adjourned at
Over now.
8 p.m.
Eric.